Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Jennifer Castenson. I'm with Buildxact, a construction project management platform, and I'm a writer for Forbes on housing innovation. And we're gonna dig right in because we only have 40 minutes. And there's a lot for us to cover. I have an amazing panel here, and they're each going to introduce themselves. And we also want to, this is a very intimate little audience, so we're going to get to know you guys a little bit as well. But starting with you, Ben, if you can just give a quick introduction.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Ben Dowling. I'm Global Managing Director for Sustainability and Digital at Havas. We are a global marketing and communications company.
Hi, I'm Peter Schlosser. I'm Vice President at Arizona State University and the Director of the Julie and Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory.
And I'm Ellie Graedon. I'm the Chief Data and Product Officer at Metron. We're a full-stack water technology provider.
And I'm Jeff Willert, Director of Data Science at SE Advisory Services, part of Schneider Electric, helping clients move towards decarbonization.
So you can see the diversity of the panel. And we're gonna have some unique perspectives on sustainability and AI and really dig into what's in front of us in creating some sort of collaboration between those two topics. But who's in the room with us today? I wanna figure out what industries you guys are with. Can you guys just raise your hand? How many are involved with real estate? Ooh, a couple. Very exciting. Energy. Transportation. Consumer products. Ooh, that's more. Fabulous. What am I missing? Shout it out. Education. Lovely. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today. And are you, in the audience, are you guys for or against the increased use of AI? For? Raise your hands. Against, undecided, there's got to be some undecided, or just can't raise your arms. And then who is driving your company's AI strategy? Do all of you have an AI strategy, and is anybody driving that strategy at the moment? A couple, yeah. Well, after today, you're going to leave here and just go, I know exactly what to do. And then who is trying to balance that with an ESG strategy? Yeah, okay, awesome. Okay, so the way that we're gonna start is with a speed round. I've asked all the panelists to only use one word or a short phrase to respond to each one of these questions. And we'll just start with you, Ben, and go down the row each time. First question, AI is changing the world at an exponential pace. What's one way that you are keeping track of trends?
Large-scale longitudinal surveys. Can I have 3?
Nice, that's perfect.
Observing the consequences.
Tend to read a lot of newsletters, MIT Tech, TLDR, industry newsletters.
Twitter, LinkedIn, and Gemini Deep Research.
Yeah. Then what is your biggest concern about AI's growth?
I think education.
That we don't really understand what all the consequences are.
The gap between the technical sophistication of the people building the tools and those using it.
Job displacement.
Yeah. What will be the biggest challenge in the next year?
Education.
Resource consumption.
Specialization and productization.
Using it for the right things.
Using it for the right things? Okay. True or false? Major tech investment will make regulation difficult.
False.
Both true and false.
False, big difference between big P policy and little p policy.
Exactly.
True.
The professor gave a true and false. Can you believe that? One way AI will significantly improve our efforts to decarbonize.
Education again.
You are on repeat.
I wanted to get in education, education, education.
Learning and research.
efficiency and managing resource loss.
Decarbonization optimization.
Okay. All right. Out of the speed round. And next time, you guys, I'm going to ask somebody from the audience to be in the speed round. So, Ben, I want to say Havas. I'm not pronouncing it as cool as you did, but did a deep dive with consumer insights. Where do consumers sit on the trends and on sustainability?
Yeah, sure. So we've had a large-scale longitudinal study looking at consumer attitudes towards brands in market for nearly 20 years. That's been running across 30 markets and around 300,000 citizen consumers globally. And that gives us a real sense of how consumers feel around trends towards brands and the macro environment. So I'm going to give you some quotes from this year's survey. And we started talking a while back around technology and AI in this survey. And because due to my extensive use of LLMs, the AI brain rot has set in, I'm going to make sure I give you the real stats here. So 58% this year's survey said technology is creating new and exciting possibilities for us as a society. So that's a majority. They're excited about technology. 37% said technology is doing us more harm than good, agreed with that statement. Now, those are changing year on year. Broadly, people do value tech and AI specifically to make their lives easier. So 44% tech advances, AI makes my life more efficient. Agreed with that. That's up year on year. And there's growing saliency from consumers around AI. They understand AI. They see where it's showing up. And that's one of the reasons I talked about education. But there is concern on regulation and legislation. So I'll leave us with this. 68% citizen consumers, all of the respondents from this year's survey, I believe society should regulate the development of AI technologies to address ethical concerns.
Yeah, huge. And there's so much that we don't know, and we don't, I mean, it's impacting our lives on a moment-to-moment basis. And Ellie is going to run us through that because the ubiquitousness of AI in our life, we don't maybe recognize it all the time, but it's been around for a long time. We were just having that discussion, Peter and Ellie and I. But Ellie, if you would run through like maybe a day in the life and help us understand how we're being impacted by AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think at the heart of it, we're using AI a lot more than we think we are. You know, you wake up in the morning, you check your Oura ring, tells you, how badly you slept. You hit Strava for your workout. The Amazon driver comes up and drops a package at your doorstep, sends it back, and it closes the order in their system. You go to get in your car, you're backing out, the car stops you, right? Because you're about to run over your kid's bicycle that's still sitting in the middle of the sidewalk. And it's not even 8 a.m., right? And we've already been interacting with this on a day-in-day basis. And sort of in your daily movements. We do a lot of work on the water side, obviously, and we know exactly how long your showers are. You can be using that information to differentiate between a long shower. If I can get my 15-year-old to get out of a shower, that would be great. All the way up to, but actually that's where it crosses a threshold and now it's a leak. And now all of a sudden you get an automated notification that your rental property has a major leak, right? And I think it's this sort of incorporation of AI in every one of these micro interactions where we don't even necessarily recognize it. But my parents, the Luddites, are still using their parking guidance in their car, and they think it's not AI, but it is, right? And it's the autocorrect in your email, and it's all of these things that we've actually been using for a decade or more, and it's just baked in to every moment. And it's our definition of what AI has just shifted, but it's certainly not just by using a chatbot.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how much or how long it takes us to stop even mentioning AI. It's just going to become baked into the system. But Peter, now that we know how consumers feel about it, and can you help us understand what are the real world impacts? How is it affecting the environment around us?
Yeah, and we have to see AI as part of the evolution of the world as a whole. We have to take a holistic picture of which world are we living in and what role does AI play in it. So as a population, we are living in what is called the Great Acceleration since the 1960s, and that pushes many systems that support life to their natural limits, including energy, including the availability of resources. And you can see that these topics are actually, they are reflected in what we see in politics and in policy. Energy use leads to global warming. We had set ourselves a goal not to warm the planet by more than 1.5 degrees Celsius in 2015. Well, we crossed that line last year. We might move towards 2.5 Celsius if all the nationally determined commitments will be held, which is uncertain. So then let's look at what role does AI play in that. AI is very energy, uses a lot of energy. If we are using the carbon footprint of energy at this point, because we have not yet switched the energy system from fossils to renewables, then AI over the next decade is projected to increase the carbon footprint by about 10 times. So there is pressure on the planet already, and use of AI at an exponential curve will increase that pressure, at least in the short term. In the long term, we can hope that AI will help us optimize how we use natural resources. But at this point, we have pressure from energy, water, resources like critical minerals, and we also have, of course, pressure, which already was mentioned, on what is the ethics of it and what does it mean to interact as humans as AI is increasing in our lives on an exponential phase. So there are a lot of pros, there are a lot of benefits of AI. It is with us since decades, it's part of our life no matter where we look. But increasingly, we also have to make sure that we are not getting into a domain where the consumption of resources due to increasing AI will bring us into situations where the life-supporting systems are stressed beyond their capacity.
Yeah, so I talked about being part of the housing industry, and in Buildxact, we're giving AI tools to builders so that they can do takeoffs automatically, and they can do all these other things that are automated. And we're in the middle of a housing crisis, and we need more affordable solutions. We need them faster, right? We need more supply. So that's one example of like a very antiquated, operationally antiquated industry benefiting from AI. Ellie, you're also in water utilities. So it is not easy to bring an industry along. So can you talk about how that's being done and the transformation and with AI and sustainability in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take a step back for a moment because I've also done a lot of work in emergency management and in health and now in water and water utilities. And I think something to really keep in mind is, especially in these industries, they are slow to move and they are slow to be adopters of new technology. And frankly, for very good reason. There are lives on the line. You can't afford to fail fast in a system where if you fail, people die. It just doesn't work. And so you end up needing to move a little more slowly, really vet, really make sure that you're going to feel comfortable and then scale. What we see a lot of, and what I actually find most interesting and valuable about these historically rich industries is we've been collecting a whole lot of data that's incredibly clean and incredibly rich. It's very, very, very deep data. It's not broad data. It's deep data. And it's highly resolved data on resource use from the last 25 years. And so a lot of what we're doing is now, migrating those data out of static storage, making sure that we can actually, we're basically doing digital transformation 20 years after the tech industry did, at the same time as we're doing AI innovation. And that process means that when we're sort of jumping ahead, we're leapfrogging a lot of that digital transformation, but it's also then really taking advantage of these data that are coming in about how the real world works. There's been a lot of conversation at the conference about the intersect with the physical world and needing to really deeply understand how the physical world operates.
I think
It's one thing to do.
We've seen this on the floor, right?
Yes, yes, all over the place, yeah, and all over the keynotes.
Real theme of CES.
That's right. I mean, it's the Siemens presentation, right? And it's this sort of how do you bring the physical world in? And a lot of that is in understanding different types of data, expanding out beyond just the strictly computational data, right? That's where LLMs went into language and is using it as data. But we're now needing to use progressively broader data types as our training data for new AI systems. So I think the place that this really then gets interesting, again, coming back to these old school industries, is that's where we're going to find the most valuable, richest, highest resolution data about how the physical world operates and how we interact with it.
So Jeff, you too, you're working with the energy, and the grid infrastructure is antiquated as well, I think we can say confidently. How are you merging the two and helping your clients understand what's important to focus on?
Yeah, so many of our clients are just global enterprises. You probably stayed in one of our clients' hotels last night. You might have eaten one of their restaurants. And there's a ton of opportunity for decarbonization there. Many of these clients have thousands of sites across the globe, and we're helping them track electric power, natural gas, water, although not to the resolution that Ellie has the opportunity to. And we're kind of synthesizing all of that data and helping them make decisions on how can we use less, how can we buy greener energy, and AI plays a major role in that. When you have a portfolio of 7,000 hotels and you want to decide where you're going to put your investment, you really need to have a good understanding at an individual site level and at a portfolio level as to what levers are at your disposal and what impacts pulling those levers is going to have. And honestly, it's not something that the human mind can really comprehend, but using a variety of machine learning tools, might have been the first time we said machine learning instead of AI today, there's an opportunity to find those optimal solutions and offset a lot more energy and water than we're using with AI. So we do see it as a net positive. I fully agree that we need to be careful. We need to think about the future. And, AI does take up, 0.1 to 2.2% of or creates that much of our carbon footprint across the globe. And that could go up to 1 or 2%. But we think about other industries. We all flew here. The airline industry is 2 to 3% of global emissions. We're not going to solve sustainable aviation fuel without new technology, and AI will certainly play a role in that.
I just want to pick up really quickly on that. I think one of the things that we'd been looking at was decarbonization of digital media. Now, these are rounding errors in terms of overall emissions, but one of the things that AI is ML, as the only non-PhD on the panel, you have to forgive me for that one. One of the things that ML has allowed us to do is address that in a way that we couldn't before. You think about really complicated data center transmissions, digital media. So the impact that you're talking about in the physical space must be huge, right?
Absolutely. And even if digital media is a fraction of a percent, we all need to play a role. That we're not going to solve this problem by decarbonizing one industry or another industry. It's going to have to be an across-the-board effort.
Right, and let's put that in some real terms too, and in reality for you guys. How many of you have made operational or structural changes because of AI? Let go of any positions, or and how much has that improved your productivity? Anybody have input on that? Anybody? Have you been able to quantify? Shout it out. You're shaking your head. How much has it changed?
We are working on that.
Yeah, you're quantifying it, but you can already see the difference. So, if you have somebody, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, sorry, we have a dozen or more use cases, and I can tell you that just one of them is doing 40,000 hours worth of man labor a year. And it's actually doing a lot of that work at a lower carbon footprint than a person sitting on a computer with 2 monitors. So it's sometimes hard to quantify that, but that's an impact.
My
Both-
my software development team is 20 to 25% more efficient.
We're seeing pretty dramatic efficiencies, and it's enabling us to do smarter work. One of the things I think we talked about a little bit was kind of optimization. We actually launched a platform called Ava at CES, which allows, we're in the ad space, so creating, making, targeting ads reaching consumers, allowed users to choose the appropriate LLM to optimize that effectively and educate themselves as well. And I think that, again, it's on the edge. These are small, small use cases, but that kind of efficiency in our space, that scales, right? And the impact in your industry is really significant.
How many of you are using carbon tracking platforms or know what they are or familiar with them? A few of you. They're all over the map if you've done your shopping for them. And Peter, when we're looking at that, it's a really complex thing to measure, right? How will AI help us be better at that?
Well, part of it already has been said. We can collect, and we actually have at our disposal, a lot of data that have not been used in the past. We are collecting data at a breathtaking rate, and the human brain cannot put them together as fast as the algorithms, the machines that are fed with our algorithms. So certain things we simply could not do because of speed. And so in that sense, there is AI helps us a lot to, in a simple, fashion, pattern recognitions that then can be translated into optimization schemes. At the same time, talking about, I agree that some of the methods that are AI-driven use less energy than if you have an armada of humans trying to do them. But that's counteracted, at least at the moment, by more and more actions that are being taken, some of which are not exactly necessary. So the question is, where almost in a philosophical sense, moving ahead, looking at the future, where does voluntary restraint come in? Where we say we cannot simply do everything that's technologically possible, but we have to make decisions about where does it really make sense to use AI because it brings us forward, and where is it simply a diffusion in the system that in the end will not have immediate positive benefits, could actually have negative benefits. So there is a big societal component in judging where AI will carry us, and that is, in my view, an area that we have not spent as much time thinking about as the technological and engineering part. That is ahead of understanding what the outcome is.
So how many of us think it should be government regulated? And it's hard to say, right? Because if we're talking about, this is, right, I live in Ohio, and in Cincinnati, and around Cincinnati, there are 180 data centers under construction right now. Crazy, right? I mean, that, and just the energy going into building them and then what they'll use, right? But if we're thinking that way, and if we're thinking about like how we're going to be governing this and how we're going to be effectively using it, I know your survey pointed to a few things, and even about how people want personal agency. So talk a little bit about where and how you see that happening with regulation.
So, I mean, look, there is a geographic split here. Let's be honest about that. It's not truly significant, but there is certainly a difference, I think, between Europe and the US at the moment in general attitudes in the policy space. Also, a little bit amongst consumers. I talked about
to explore that a little bit more. There are countries where they don't have access to energy like we do.
Exactly.
We were just talking about that. Like,
exactly.
And we're walking around Vegas where every single freaking light is on, and and Bellagio is spewing water like you would not believe. So it's like their resources are unlimited.
It's one of the things that the reason I talked about saliency, right? Saliency in the survey, and it's a large-scale survey. It's pretty unique in the industry. We've been running it for 20 years. It tells us a lot about how consumers are feeling. AI saliency is a big thing, right? Some consumers are just not aware of it. It's not that no one's using it. We talked a little bit about that. You set that up for us, really. With that increased saliency of what are the impacts of AI and how am I using it, comes potential pressure. But we've seen that weighted with optimism, right? When you get these tools into the hands of everyday consumers, whether that be for what we saw with LLMs really surfacing this as the great thing about ChatGPT, right, is it's a consumer product, right? It was the first time consumers had seen these systems and technologies that had been around for a long time. I think where we will go with this is there will be a balance between the efficiency in folks' lives. We've seen a lot of that on the CES floor today. I've been blown away. Again, the only non-PhD on the panel, so I may be a little bit simplistic here, but I've been blown away about how much applied stuff we've seen from CES. So that balance is going to be really critical for consumers, for industries, and us in B2B as well, business-to-business services going forward.
Yeah, so what is the responsibility of a corporation? Who wants to take that?
Well, for us as a company that operates globally, we see a lot of pressure in Europe, of course, to report in CSRD. Those pressures are a little bit weaker here in the US, but we also see that a lot of customers are expecting or preferring corporations that do behave responsibly. And yes, to your point, everybody needs to take responsibility for this. I don't know that government regulation is necessarily the only pathway there. I love it when I see customers choosing a company because of their green policies. And so those pressures are coming from a lot of different directions.
And I think that's why, in the survey data and in the research, we keep coming back to this idea of agency. Consumers want agency, right? They want transparency, they want the ability to take those decisions, and they want control. And very briefly, we shouldn't shy away from the fact that there are cost of living pressures, there are macroeconomic changes, so we should be aware of those. That in itself is also about agency.
I think.
Go on.
So the other piece that I would add here when we're thinking about what is the responsibility of each company and each organization. So again, I think this differentiation between big P versus little p policy matters, right? So if we're talking about big P policy in terms of how it gets governed from a federal or global scale, fine, that's one thing. And that's where we're very much limited by what is already in place. We are already heavily regulating most of the systems in which AI is being applied. Right? When we talk, it doesn't matter how you run over the pedestrian. You can't do it with your cart and buggy, and you can't do it in self-driving mode with your Tesla. In either event, the outcome is actually what we're regulating, and regulating pretty effectively in that context. When we start to look at little p policy, that's where we get into how government or how organizations are self-managing. And that is being driven. I mean, we talk a lot about ESG and we talk about resource efficiency. That's also cost efficiency. And especially as electricity costs drive up, as water drives up, we end up with usage thresholds. So in water, for example, the first 10,000 gallons you use in a month comes at one rate, and your rate goes up significantly when you get over that 10,000 threshold mark, 10,000 gallon threshold. And that's particularly true in resource or water constrained regions, but there are getting to be more and more of those. And so I think a lot of this ends up being actually internal economic drivers that are then pushing us in the right direction there. And so I think a lot of it is actually baked into our current systems. We're also seeing companies be progressively more aware that they are going to be held liable for the impacts. That AI is no longer a standalone carve out where we can sort of point at it from a social media perspective and say, see, we're not liable. We are being held to traffic laws,
I think
and those sorts of things.
In the sustainability space, right? If
Yep.
we're honest, this was one of the issues with that framing, right? It wasn't framed in terms of efficiency, in terms of people's lives, and this is why the AI and sustainability conversation debate is so exciting, because I think it allows us to do that reframing.
It's practical.
Yeah.
Just quickly on the quote-unquote education industry. So we are an institute of higher education. We have about 200,000 students, many times more lifelong learners. So we actually have to change our entire approach to how to educate young minds, older minds, in terms of what does it mean that AI is more omnipresent, increasingly? How can they responsibly deal with it? I can tell you, you have a class and you give the first homework assessment, assignment, and let's say just a round number, 100 students, 90 of them give you the same answer. So you feed your question into ChatGPT and you get the next version of it. So you have to appeal to them to say, you have to use these tools responsibly. You don't want to hand your creativity, your agency to a tool. You still have to think. I personally have no problem if they use that tool, but then they have to reflect upon what it tells them and put their own opinion into it. Otherwise, we are losing, as humankind, one of our major assets, which is the evolution of the mind, the foresight, wisdom, and that is something that changes our approach to how we train, how we develop curricula, and how we add modules that confront the learners with the existence of AI and where they can use it beneficially and where they also have to be careful not to hand off their creativity.
Just real quick on that, 100% agree. And using it to do your homework is obviously a terrible example. And this kind of gets to my point from the original rapid fire round. It's using it for the right thing. To me, if I can help my sustainability analysts parse data faster, get data off of invoices faster, it lets them use their brains. Using, pulling up an invoice and keying in the data and then opening the next one and keying in the data, that's not using their minds. That's deterioration. And so 100% to your point, let's keep our minds sharp and let AI take some of that menial work off of our plate so we can focus on the right things.
Yeah, so this is very interesting, and we've seen that there's government implications, corporate responsibility, individual responsibility is what we're talking about too. And we're part of a more global energy market. So we're looking at not only what is impacting us with our government, but geopolitically, how we're influencing the rest of the world with our use. There are other countries that don't have access to energy like the US does, to the point we were talking about it before. And there are consequences, real-time consequences. I think Ellie was talking about this too, that some of the consequences, like if energy rates go up and then we don't have access to water, we can't build homes. They're actually not giving permits in specific areas of the country because there is not access to enough water. And we're in the middle of a housing crisis. So, there are actually real world impacts that we have to consider. We have a final lightning round. And actually, sorry, Peter, I want to ask you one other thing. So as we're thinking about all these things, are there errors that could compound super quickly that we need to be cognizant of as we're moving into the future?
There are always errors in forward projections. Often we were not paying enough attention to them. When we are projecting into the future, we increasingly have to pay attention to in which error envelope are we moving and how can we adjust if we see that we are approaching that error envelope or we are exceeding it. So our solutions moving forward have to be much more dynamic. They have to be much more foresightful. We have to anticipate more than just reacting to issues that we have created by our actions today. And so our approach to seeing what the next generations will face, we will face some of it, we are already in it, but what especially the next generation will face, we have to take into account scenario formations where we're not saying we have the capacity to predict what the world will look in 2050, let's say, or 2100, but we have to say there is a range that depends very heavily on how we act today. And getting that into young minds, getting that into minds in general, is one of the major tasks that we have as an educational institution.
Thank you. That's reality for sure. So final speed round, and there are a couple of different changes. I'm going to ask one person in the audience to participate. I'll just stick the mic in your face. And we're going to come, Jeff, down this way. And Ben, the final rule is you cannot say education this time. So the first question is, if you had $1 billion to invest in this landscape, how would you do it? Jeff.
Education. $1 billion is a lot of money. I think it has to be renewable energy.
Figuring out how to turn other and new types of sensor information about the world into data that we can use for AI systems.
Work on understanding the effects, positive and negative, of AI.
That sounded like education again. No, I'm kidding. But I would say NVIDIA chips. No, not really. I'm going to give a very specific answer.
You can have two.
Yeah, two for that. Immersion cooling. So one of our clients, Shell, a lot of innovation in that space. Immersion cooling in data centers. Yeah, maybe there is going to be one thing that will make a significant impact.
Efficiency is very important in combination probably with recycling, design, optimal design of the product. That is a kind of sustainability.
Okay, what is the biggest opportunity, Jeff?
There's so many.
The biggest, there's not many biggest.
Decarbonization. I really think that people need to find ways to use AI for good. I think there's a ton of space in healthcare, in education, in climate to be leveraging AI in ways that the benefits far, far, far outweigh any negative detractors.
Specialized products that solve real human problems. There's a lot of picking a tool to try to have an AI tool as opposed to going out and solving the problem in the world.
System optimization using massive data.
Giving consumers agency.
What am I saying?
Biggest opportunity.
Working with the community leaders like nonprofits to help drive change and innovation at a level that community can understand.
Name one thing about AI that you haven't figured out that you are dying to understand better.
I know everything. How we can actually communicate in a way where not everything is just AI. We can be more specific, and I think there's value in differentiating the various types of artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, mathematics that all has kind of gotten bunched together over the last 3 years so that we can have more clear conversations.
The integration of transformer architecture and those sorts of models with our industrial AI systems that have been around a lot longer, and this sort of how do we pair up these different, foundationally different types of algorithms to solve problems in the world.
The role of AI in human decision making.
The way that we interface, the chat window is still very much there, even though LLMs are multimodal. Google are doing some really interesting thing about building interfaces on the fly using these models. How do normal folks interact with these systems? What's after the chatbot? What's after the LLM? We're already seeing some stuff in that space in agentic. That for me is the next exciting frontier. Something I'd like to understand.
Hi, I'm Holly Evans. I'm with the Responsible Business Alliance, and we work with the entire supply chain, large brands, small brands, you name it, to help improve environmental and human rights due diligence across supply chains. Yesterday, I was at a session where the speaker was talking about AI being developed for good. And I kept thinking, who's going to decide what's good? I mean, that has inherent judgment questions. And how do we ensure that the judgments that govern the system truly are ethical? Or are they developed in a way that has a bias or a corporate interest? And that's what really concerns me about AI. How are we going to allow these machines to operate without the soul that somewhat governs human beings? So that's what keeps me up at night.
Thank you. All right, so to you guys, we have another response.
Thank you. I just want to have a really quick comment. My name is Chang Ming. I'm in the real estate development consulting business, coming from Toronto, Canada. My comment about the best possible solution is really utilizing the AI to make the existing fossil fuel burning more efficiently. Like the saving from the existing traditional way of doing things should be way outperforming the new way of doing things. Thank you.
Yeah, great comment. Thank you. So really quick, we can't get off track with this speed round. Jeff, one call to action for the audience.
Use AI, learn AI, but use it consciously.
Don't view it as a monolith. It's not AI as one thing. It's a whole lot of different tools that should have their own specialized applications.
Understand it's a tool. Keep your creativity.
Yeah, I think beware of AI brain rot. It is a thing. If you're using it properly, it isn't. Use it for good.
My call to action is for you guys to give them a big round of applause and big thank you for their expertise. And thank you all for attending.